YouTube, welcome back to Happy Hour. Today, we're going to do a head-to-head of the Glenallachie 15 versus the Glendronach 15. Hello YouTube, welcome back to Happy Hour. So as I said in the intro, I've got two pretty amazing whiskeys that I'm gonna shoot out today. I don't know if it's a straight up versus. I think on their own, spoiler alert, these are two pretty fantastic whiskeys. But I kind of said this in the last video I think I did with Glenlivet 12 versus Glenfiddich 12, that I've really started to learn. I feel like my palate, not to sound too fancy, but I feel like my palate or my tastes have really grown, at least understanding some nuances and picking up some flavors and some differences between certain bottlers or brands by doing these kind of head-to-heads or side-by-side tastings. It really is interesting to see what you may have thought on different occasions was very, very similar whiskeys, to then have a sip and a nosing side by side to realize, wow, they are quite different. So I got two I would consider kind of heavy hitters with kind of an interesting story or lineage between these two brands. So you probably seen my Glendronach review. I reviewed it against Macallan 12. I think I even talked a bit about it with Naked Grouse, what have you. Glendronach 12, I enjoy very much. I really kind of only started to get heavily into it since Billy Walker, the famed Billy Walker, who was at one point the master distiller at Glendronach. I think they got it in like 2008 to 2016. So for about an 8-year period, he was kind of heralded as, you know, one of the top dogs, if not the top dog in this whole kind of Scotch whiskey experience. Glendronach heavily sherried whiskeys, if you know anything about Glendronachs. So yeah, Billy Walker left in, I believe, 2016, 2017, left Glendronach and moved over to Glenallachie. So I think him and a few guys purchased Glenallachie from Chivas or something like that. So it's kind of like, you know, you've got the same, arguably, not only are they 15-year-old heavily sherried whiskeys, Speyside whiskeys, but you have, this is a new bottling. I should point this out. So this is the Glendronach 15-year-old revival, and this is a newer bottling. So really this doesn't have anything to do with Billy Walker. This was, I think, I bought this last year. So this is either a 2019 or a 2020 bottling. But one would hope it still has some of his heritage of what he had his hands on for the last, decade or so. And then Glenallachie is kind of his new baby, right? So this is the Glenallachie 15-year-old, and it says right on there, Billy Walker. So I thought it was kind of an interesting, on its own, on their own, the two whiskeys I think would be a great head-to-head, two heavily sherried whiskeys, or Loso and Pedro matured whiskeys, both 15 years old, both Speysides. But also there's a history of this one master distiller who really made his name for himself. I think for the most part that, you know, one could say Benriach, I think he started first or repurchased earlier in the 2000s. But Glendronach, I think, is really where he made a big name for himself. And then moving on to Glenallachie. So, yeah, I thought there's a bit of a history. I'm not a huge history buff on this stuff. I find it interesting, but I really tend to kind of really just care what the whiskeys taste like in the end. But having a bit of a story is kind of cool as well. So another thing I do want to point out is the Glendronach, I think were, you know, historically, I know some of my older bottlings I have, they were really, I don't want to say famous for, but they were, one of the things they were renowned for was unchill filtered, no color added. I believe the older versions of the Revival had that. This doesn't say that on there, so it doesn't say anything about unchill filtered or no color added. That's kind of a drag, but it is what it is. Bottled at 46%. The Glenallachie, now that Mr. Walker's over there, unchill filtered, no color added, and 46% as well. So both same ABV. The Glenallachie is holding for the purists with unchill filtered and no color added. It's a bit of a shame that Glendronach's moved away from that, but you know, the reality is I don't really have the bottles that I guess I could find some newer bottles of the 18 and see if there's a big difference, but I don't know. I don't know how much of a fuss this, you know, color added I get. Color added that's to me is just kind of cheating a little bit. It's like, I don't really care what color it is, to be honest with you. When I look at the color, I want that to be a representation in my head of what I think I'm about to drink. When I see something this dark, I'm expecting it to be a sherry bomb, right? I don't expect to be a bourbon barrel that they just dumped a bunch of caramel coloring in. And when I taste it, I'm like, what the hell is this, right? So to me, that's kind of cheating. The unchill filtered thing, I'll leave that up to the experts to argue. I don't know that anybody's really even done a definitive study where they've taken the exact same spirit out of the still, aged it exactly the same way. How would you do that? I don't know. Even from barrel to barrel, things can change, right? But I digress. Glendronach 15 versus Glenallachie 15. Let's give them a pour, sniff, taste. So they're both quite dark, as you would expect from, sherry cask aged whiskeys. Both, like I said, Pedro and Orloso. The Glenallachie is, I would say, quite a bit darker. A fair amount darker, which is kind of interesting, but so be it. I'm going to start with the Glendronach. This is going to be hard to, I don't think there's going to be a loser coming out of this because these types of whiskeys are right up my alley. As you can see, I've had probably 3, 4, 5 drams out of each of these. I've had both the bottles for, this is actually quite difficult to find around here. I had to get this from overseas. You can probably see the stamp. This is the Glendronach's relatively easy to find, at least at my Binnies. Yeah, so it smells like everything why I love Glendronach. There's a huge sherry influence. I'm getting a lot of the bourbon. I'm getting quite a bit of bourbon notes, so I'm getting a bit of the barrel out of here as well. Some of the oakiness out of the barrel, but not overpowering. Not like if you saw the Kirkland 24-year-old that I did, that was like a barrel monster. This is beautifully balanced. The sweet, it's syrupy smelling. I can almost smell like my mouth's watering, like dark plums and figs, but like a super sweet stewed fruits. But there's also some of the higher kind of a little bit of apple. I get some of the funk from the sherry. Wow. Fantastique. All right, let's go over to the Glenallachie. That smells really, really nice too. So this right away, back to back, I get quite a bit more funk. And the color would suggest that too, that there's maybe a little more sherried influence coming through in the Glenallachie. That being said, there's a lot of the same notes. I'm getting a lot of those deeper stewed fruits still, like the figgy plum, raisins. It smells really nice. No, I'm not getting any of the barrel and none of that oakiness out of it. And none of the kind of the higher, I get a little more brighter fruits with this too, on the Glendronach. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, there's basically the color. If you can imagine what that would smell like in comparison, that's what I'm getting. This is a lot more sherried. A lot of them are at the funky sherry notes. Wow, they both smell fantastic. I don't know, I might give the nose to the Glendronach. I feel like there's the spectrum's a little bit wider. Like I'm getting the sherry, even a little bit of oak. The spices I get on both. The stewed fruits on both. But here I'm getting a little bit more of the apple. I feel like this is really a lot of the sherry is maybe pulling some of the high notes down that I'm getting from this. The brighter fruits, the apple, and a little bit of orange peel, cinnamon, like a cinnamon orange. I don't know what the hell a cinnamon orange is, but Yeah, I'm gonna give the Glendronach the nose. All right, let's taste it. Delicious. Everything I got on the nose, I'm getting on the palate as well. There's sherry, getting a little bit of oak tannin. I'm getting those stewed fruits, amazing mouthfeel, amazing coating. Lots of oils. I'm getting a little bit of that apple, lots of spices. Yeah, spices and stewed fruits. But then I get a little bit of that kind of caramel, almost like a caramel brown sugar as well. It's really just delicious. Yeah, I really wish I could find an old bottle because I've seen a few reviews where people said the old bottlings were even better than the new bottlings. But if that's the case, then wow, because this is pretty damn good to my palate. All right, let's go to the Glenallachie. Yeah, definitely more of that sherry funk, which I like. It opens up a little more on the palate. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of the similar flavors to the Glendronach, just a little more leathery richness. Great mouthfeel as well, very coating, lots of oils. Again, stewed fruits, spicy, little cinnamon. These are very, 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 very close together in flavors. I feel like this is a little deeper, darker. It even looks a little deeper and darker. It's a little more leather and richness on the bottom end of the sherry. I still think maybe the Glendronach is a little more well-rounded. It has a little more spectrum to the flavors. It's even a little bit sweeter up top, like a little bit more of the kind of powdered sugar-y flavors. Wow, they're both fantastic, man. I don't know. I think if you get either of these, you're going to be pretty happy. Again, if you like sherry whiskeys. Let's talk about price quickly. Even though I don't remember how much they cost, I think I got a pretty vague idea. I think this guy, I think around me, this is like 90 bucks. I think it's like 89.99. So, you know, not cheap, but it's 15-year-old whiskey. The Glenallachie is a little bit tougher for me because I have not seen it in a store around here. I had to resort to purchasing it online overseas and bringing it in. But what I did pay for it was, I think it was like 70 something US, mid to high 70s. And then obviously shipping on top of it. So comparable, you know, shipping depending on how many bottles you buy, blah, 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 right? But let's call it like 18 bucks, 20 bucks, give or take. So yeah, they're roughly the same price. I believe this is a few dollars more here. I've seen it online in the US. At my store, it's not in stock, but I believe it was like closer to 100. So they're both kind of steeper priced, upwards of the $80 to $100 range. But for me, this is where I live. This is my sweet spot. When I want a sherried whiskey that's got a little bit of everything in there, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of these. I think I'm going to give it to the Glendronach. And I'm talking about by a half a point. Again, I want to emphasize these are both amazing. I will buy both of these again, guaranteed. I just think right now, at least, that the Glendronach seems to kind of cover a little more of the flavor spectrum for me. I'm not calling this a one-trick pony in any way, shape, or form, but the sherry definitely pushes through a little heavier on this guy, where I feel like the Glendronach, at least on my taste buds right now, there's a little less sherry influence and allows for a little more flavors to come through. But wow, man, both killer whiskeys. Very happy with both of them. And again, if you like sherry whiskeys, I don't think you can go wrong with either of them. So if you don't mind shelling out that 80, 90, 100 bucks and you want a 15-year-old Speyside, either one of these I think is fantastic. So that being said, if you like, give me a thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe, that'd be cool too. I'd appreciate it. I'm going to enjoy these bubbas tonight. And Happy New Year. See you next time.